My sister offered me $60,000 to donate my eye. When I refused, she called me manipulative. I took revenge by revealing her career lies to her manager. In February, my sister Samantha demanded I donate my cornea to her daughter Ella, who required a transplant after an illness. I was sorry to learn about Ella's health and inquired why Samantha wasn't giving, considering she was the mother and greatest match. Samantha chuckled and explained she was a professional model who needed both eyes while I programmed from home. Lost vision in one eye wouldn't affect my income. Me being the donor made sense since she stated my appearance didn't matter for my profession, but her face was her livelihood. I told her it was absurd and she couldn't ask me to give up my cornea because her eyes were more precious. She claimed I was selfish since Ella was young and had her whole life ahead, while I was 40 and unmarried and didn't need flawless vision to attract anybody. She claimed one eye would be enough for my lifestyle as I looked at computer displays all day. Samantha called me daily to argue why I should give instead of her after I declined. She stated photoshoots required depth awareness, while coders could use one eye. She said she had contracts requiring her to look well, but I did not. She stated her spouse would leave her if she had face operations, but I had no audience. She stated losing one eye wouldn't matter because people knew I used glasses and my eyes weren't flawless. Samantha persuaded our mother to pressure me by March. Mom called to tell Samantha's modeling business supported her family, while I simply had myself to worry about. Ella would be heartbroken to witness her mother's profession end when there was an easy remedy. She told me to consider what was best for the family rather than being adamant about something unimportant. Mom stated she was too old to donate her cornea then and might not be a suitable match. Next, our father joined the effort, stating I needed to stand up as an aunt as Samantha had sacrificed so much as a mother. Samantha's nanny housekeeper and limited time with Ella between modeling assignments made me wonder what sacrifices she made. He said I was being tough to upset Samantha, who had always envied me. He indicated guys weren't good fits for little girls when I inquired if he'd donate his cornea. Samantha's husband James texted me headlines about one-eyed persons living regular lives. He stated hundreds survived and I was overreacting. He offered me $60,000 for my cornea as a company. When I replied no amount of money would make me give up my body parts for someone who wouldn't, he called me greedy and claimed I was pricing Ella's vision. I told him Samantha was pricing it by not donating. The persecution escalated when Samantha informed Ella Aunt Rachel wouldn't help her sight again. Ella sent me tearful voicemails wondering why I didn't assist her. Samantha advised her to claim mother needed her eyes for work, but Aunt Rachel worked on computers all day. An 8-year-old was guilt-tripping me because her mother was too vain to give her cornea. My patience ran out, so I showed everyone how selfish Samantha was. I phoned Samantha's modeling agency to talk to her manager. I explained and asked if Samantha would lose contracts for donating a cornea to her kid. The manager said, "Of course not. That would be discrimination, and no client would punish a mother for helping her sick child." In fact, she said it would probably generate positive publicity and show Samantha as a devoted mother. She was appalled that Samantha was using her career to pressure others. The manager phoned Samantha immediately to say the agency approved her giving to Ella and would accommodate any recuperation time. She was also unhappy that Samantha lied about job concerns to avoid aiding her daughter. Samantha yelled at me for ruining everything. I hung up on Samantha and remained shocked for many minutes. My hands shook as I placed the phone on my desk. My suspicions were validated by the modeling agency manager. Samantha lied about professional concerns to avoid cornea donation. Instead of being embarrassed of herself, she was upset at me for exposing her selfishness. I looked at my PC without noticing my pre-call code. I had trouble breathing and my chest was constricted. She believed my phoning her agency wrecked everything. Not that she wrecked everything by not helping her daughter. Not that she spent weeks manipulating and pressing me, but that I was the problem for discovering the truth. My phone buzzed non-stop 20 minutes later. Samantha's texts flooded my screen. She called me spiteful and accused me of undermining her agency connection. She stated I ruined her career behind her back instead of donating discreetly like a sister. As each message arrived, my rage grew. Her priorities were clear in every communication. Only Ella's job, attractiveness and reputation, not her vision or motherhood. I screenshotted every communication. Her wrath revealed her true self to everyone. She sent 12 furious SMS in the first hour. "I've always envied her success," she remarked. She stated I couldn't tolerate that she was gorgeous and renowned and I was a nothing coder. She stated I wanted to injure her because I was annoyed by my monotonous existence. That night at 7 o'clock my phone rang. The screen displayed James's name. Something compelled me to answer. The tone of his voice was very different from his commercial proposals. He sounded worn out. Before the manager phoned Samantha, he didn't know she lied about the agency's stance. It was his belief that career repercussions existed. He inquired whether I was satisfied after embarrassing his wife. I assured him Ella may receive the cornea from her mother. His silence was lengthy. He then reported Samantha had closed herself in their bedroom and refused to communicate. Not my problem to repair. He groaned and hung up without saying goodbye. I phoned Olivia after speaking with James. Second ring, she took up. I recounted the past month to her. Samantha calls regularly with fresh donation motives. Father and mother joining pressure campaign. James offers $60,000 for cornea. Ella's Samantha coached weeping voicemails, calling the modeling agency and discovering Samantha lied the whole time. Olivia was quiet as I spoke. She was shocked when I finished that they tried to tell me my eyes were less useful since I'm a coder. She said I need flawless eyesight for coding as much as Samantha does for modeling. Maybe more considering I deal with tiny writing on screens all day. She called the family pressure campaign insane and wrong. Olivia asked Samantha why she was so hesitant to donate if the organization guaranteed no professional penalties. I realized I didn't know Samantha's underlying issue beyond vanity and face surgery concern. Olivia said Samantha may have underlying worries about medical procedures and was hiding behind career justifications, or that she used modeling as a barrier. After hanging up, I contemplated that. Samantha seemed less like a monster, but that didn't justify manipulating me into surgery. My mom contacted 4 days after the agency confrontation. Her voice was hesitant and distinct from her earlier pressure. She confirmed the incident with Samantha's manager. She regretted pushing me so hard when Samantha lied to us. She apologized for not believing me about Samantha being selfish. Her apologies sounded more like she regretted backing the wrong horse. Not sorry she pressured me to donate a bodily part. Not sad she valued Samantha's profession and attractiveness above mine. Sorry Samantha lied and embarrassed her. I informed my mom her apologies didn't fix the issue. She believed she could pressure me to donate despite Samantha's falsehoods. She thought Samantha's profession and attractiveness mattered more. She considered my physiological autonomy optional for familial convenience. Mom on the other line fell silent. She said to consider what I said. She hung up without saying goodbye. Sitting with my phone, I felt empty. Part of me wanted her to comprehend. I suspected she would never. Dad phoned the next day. His tone was defensive from the outset. He felt I was too hard on my mom, who was helping Ella. Samantha's job explanation deceived the family, he said. I punished them for trusting her. I explained that they trusted her because it matched their vision. My needs are less important than Samantha's. Her career matters more than mine. That her looks trumps mine. Dad became mad and said I was distorting things. He stated they wanted Ella's finest. How come I had to decide what was best for Ella instead of her mother? That stumped him. Samantha didn't call me for a week after the agency incident. James occasionally texted updates. Samantha met with the transplant coordinator to evaluate donors. Her medical exams were underway. She discussed the operation with the surgical team. He never faulted Samantha. I never received an apology for his pressure. He apologized for the issue getting out of hand in his messages. Like this was an accident rather than a plan to force me into surgery. Thomas Clark of the transplant facility called me Thursday morning. He asked whether I would be considered as a backup donor if Samantha wasn't right for Ella. They astonished me by contacting me. I asked Samantha if wanted it. Thomas said identifying backup donors was normal. Before the pressure campaign, Samantha submitted documents with my name weeks before asking me. She thought I'd agree if she pressed hard enough. She listed my name like my body belonged to the family. I asked Thomas to give me time to consider the backup donor. I could take as long as I needed to feel comfortable with my choice, he added. I liked his calm, professional voice throughout the interview after weeks of family members yelling at me. Long after we hung up, I stared at my phone. The realization hit me hard. Samantha put my name on the forms weeks ago when she launched her pressure campaign. She never requested a backup donor evaluation. She thought I'd cave if she pressed hard enough. She regarded my body like family property she could claim anytime she needed. Despite being enraged for weeks, the assumption made me furious again. She filled up formal medical documents with my details before talking to me since she was so confident in her abilities to deceive me. Olivia brought neighborhood bakery coffee and cakes Saturday afternoon. I told her everything about Thomas's call and the backup donor on my couch. I told her my conflicting feelings and she listened quietly. I wanted to assist Ella, a youngster stuck in adult troubles, but I worried that being backup would show my family's influence succeeded. Olivia suggested something I hadn't considered. Only if Samantha couldn't contribute medically would I donate. It wasn't like being first or having my family force me to get surgery. I wouldn't have to give if Samantha donated properly. Though that made logic, I felt odd about the circumstance. Olivia stated that was usual considering my family's treatment for 3 months. She advised me to see a professional therapist about processing everything since family manipulation campaigns weren't typical life experiences that friends could help with. I looked for family dynamics and boundary therapists online on Sunday. Most of the websites were generic and useless, however Miriam Shepard's description addressed helping with individuals struggling with familial pressure and guilt. Her office was 20 minutes from my flat. I briefly told her I needed aid with a delicate family matter with medical pressure Monday morning. She was available the following Thursday, so I scheduled it. I'd never been to therapy. My family always thought therapy was for others. However, this terrible issue made me rethink every familial bond, and I wanted someone impartial to assist me deal through it. I drove to Miriam's office Thursday afternoon, worried about therapy. Her waiting room included nice music and comfy chairs. When she summoned me back to her office, she appeared normal, not frightening. She asked me what brought me in, so I explained cornea donation demand. When I started talking, everything came out. Samantha's first call, the daily pressure campaign, my mother's calls about family commitments, my father's jealously charges, James's $60,000 offer, Ella's coached guilt messages, the modeling agency showdown, and now the backup donor dilemma. Miriam probed my childhood and Samantha connection. I noticed trends I hadn't seen before answering. Samantha was always attractive and started modeling at 12. Our parents protected her modeling career like a treasure. I was brilliant, received high marks, and studied computer science in college. Everyone expected me to be independent and prioritize Samantha's needs. I was supposed to comprehend why Samantha robbed my education cash for modeling portfolios. I wasn't allowed to protest when Samantha wanted our parents' attention for auditions and photo shoots. I accepted the pattern as regular family relations for decades. Miriam utilized parentification in reverse, a new phrase. Parentification usually requires older kids to care for younger siblings. However, my family asked me to suffer for my younger sister since her needs were prioritized above mine. I was responsible and didn't need anything. But Samantha was exceptional, and required everything. Miriam noted my refusal of the contribution requirement was healthy self-preservation, not greed like my family alleged. She emphasized that I'd always accepted Samantha's needs over mine. Finally saying no helped me appreciate myself. I startled myself by sobbing in her office. Despite the pressure and manipulation, I didn't cry. Sitting there hearing someone support my sentiments and limits cracked something loose. I realized I'd spent 40 years thinking being a good sister and daughter meant shrinking to make Samantha bigger. Miriam gave me Kleenex and said we had a lot to go through, but she was delighted I came in. We made another appointment next week. James began contacting me regarding Samantha's transplant center exam 2 weeks after the modeling agency fight. He stated the day-long assessment included various scans and procedures. Samantha was nervous about all the medical things and kept asking how long it would take. The tone of his communication suggested I should reply with pity or encouragement. Each text was read and I put my phone down without responding. I wasn't ready to comfort someone who'd spent a month manipulating me into surgery. Samantha chose to give and now faced the medical process. My sympathies was exhausted after what she'd done. James sent another text that evening claiming Samantha was fatigued from testing. I remained silent. He could reassure his wife about her choices. Thomas Clark contacted me Tuesday morning with Samantha's assessment findings. Unlike our previous talk, his voice was more guarded. Samantha's examination showed early-stage keratoconus in her other eye. I asked what that meant because I didn't know anything about eye issues. He explained keratoconus as corneal thinness and bulging. Samantha's early-stage mild illness making her a less appropriate donor than predicted. She could donate to Ella, but surgery and post-op problems were increased. The transplant team wanted to evaluate me as a backup after this discovery. They needed a robust backup donor in case Samantha's operation or recuperation went poorly. Hearing the news caused a complex combination of emotions. I felt justified that Samantha wasn't the wonderful donor she thought she was when she said her eyes were better than mine. But worry returned that I might get involved. I had worked hard to keep my boundaries, but now I might need to contribute for medical reasons. I informed Thomas I needed 48 hours to decide on backup assessment. That was good, and I could call him when I was ready. After we hung up, I contacted Miriam's office to request an emergency phone session. Her receptionist suggested Miriam call that afternoon. I conveyed the change to Miriam at 3 using Samantha's evaluation scores. She asked me how I felt about being a backup donor now that there was a medical purpose rather than family pressure. Yes, I was puzzled and guilty. Miriam helped me separate Ella's medical requirements from my family's manipulation throughout the last months. She said I could assist Ella without believing my family's tale that I had to be the first donor. I would choose backup evaluation for my own reasons, not under compulsion. That distinction seemed crucial. I didn't give in to familial pressure. I was deciding whether to help my niece. I recapped everything with Olivia that night. She inquired about my intentions. Leave family conflict and strain behind. After thinking about it, I wanted to help Ella if Samantha couldn't give properly. Ella was innocent and deserved her eyesight restored. But I had to do it on my own, not because my family pressured me. Olivia thought it was a good idea and asked for my terms. I deliberated. I stressed that I was doing this for Ella, not because I agreed with my family that my body parts were negotiable. I wanted everyone to realize that giving was my decision, not something I should have done sooner. Olivia thought those were appropriate limits. She noted that I'd previously shown I could resist family pressure by refusing for 2 months. Accepting backup assessment didn't remove or invalidate that boundary setting. I phoned Thomas Wednesday morning to say I'd proceed with backup donor evaluation, but I stressed that I was doing it for Ella, not my family. I also mentioned that if I had to contribute, it would be my decision, and I wouldn't let people say I was finally coming around or doing what I should have done. Thomas Clark stated he understood and will register my complaints. He set my evaluation sessions for the next week and provided me testing instructions. After hanging up, I felt weirdly peaceful about the decision. I chose based on my ideals and reasons, not familial pressure. That felt distinct from anything else. Evening call from Mom. She seemed relieved when I replied. She thanked me for being reasonable after James informed her I'd back up donor assessment. I interrupted her story. I clearly said that I wasn't being rational or agreeing with them. Choosing to aid my niece was different than giving in to familial pressure. I assured her that I would donate because I wanted to help Ella, not because the family manipulation campaign worked. My mother grew silent on the other end. She responded quietly that she recognized my difference. She seemed saddened, but maybe she understood this time. She was delighted I was willing to be examined as backup and hoped Samantha's donation went well so I wouldn't have to. I felt exhausted but stronger when we hung up without family chit-chat. Despite helping, I kept my limits, felt progress. I checked in at the main desk the next week at the medical center. My receptionist gave me a clipboard with medical history and health status paperwork. I answered dozens of questions on surgeries, meds, family health, and smoking drinking. After submitting the papers, a nurse phoned me and brought me through a maze of halls to the ophthalmology department. After checking my blood pressure and temperature, she led me to the first testing room. The eye exams were different from my normal vision checks. The technician put my head in a tunnel-like contraption. Lighting flashed and equipment made frightening noises. She said they mapped my corneas to look for anomalies. Next was a contraption that captured back-of-eye photos using drops that blurred everything for 20 minutes. The technician specifically inquired about my computer use and headaches and eye strain. Even though no one was scrutinizing me, I felt unusually protective about my screen time as I detailed my dual-monitor work setup and regular breaks. Blood testing in the lab down the hall followed, where the phlebotomist filled a dozen vials for compatibility screens and health indicators. The ophthalmologist saw me after testing. In her computer review, she indicated my corneal thickness was great. For someone who spent so much time on screens, my eye health was excellent, and I would be a good donor. She stressed the if, saying Samantha was still the main donor and I was backup. After weeks of my family saying Samantha's eyesight was more essential, seeing her say my eyes were great made me feel weirdly validated. I was warned of infection, eyesight abnormalities, and healing issues if I donated. She said cornea donation was safe, but I needed to know what I was signing up for. I signed permission documents recognizing hazards and left the hospital fatigued after hours of testing. I got more blood tests and a surgical team consultation the following week. I signed in at the front desk and read an eye health magazine in the waiting area. Samantha was heading through the entryway with James behind her when I looked up. Her face tightened as she looked down at her phone as we met across the room. James offered an uneasy nod, like he wanted to recognize me but wasn't sure whether he could. Neither came over to greet me or inquire about my evaluation. Samantha took a seat across the waiting area from me with her back to me. James glanced over to approach, but Samantha grabbed his arm and muttered something to keep him still. A sense of anxiety permeated the room. Other patients may be curious about our drama. I rose up and crossed the corridor when the nurse called my name. James offered another awkward nod as Samantha stared at her phone. Without speaking to them, I followed the nurse to my appointment, leaving them in that horrible stillness. Tom phoned me at work the next week. He read my test findings with a professional yet kind voice. He said my corneal thickness was perfect. My blood testing was flawless for transplant compatibility and my eyes were okay. He thought I was a better fit for Ella than Samantha because of my eye health and lack of corneal indicators. He swiftly emphasized that Samantha was still a good donor and the medical team was proceeding with her. The family and medical team would decide which donor to employ based on medical criteria and family choices. He inquired whether I had any findings or procedural queries. Asked why I was a better fit than Samantha, he said my corneas were thicker and healthier, which improved results. He said Samantha may donate well, but if we were comparing the two alternatives medically, I would be better. After we hung up, I stared at my computer screen without seeing the code. Samantha called me 2 days later. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Before I finished greeting her, her voice was tight and aggressive. She stated Thomas Clark told her I was a better fit than her and asked whether I was delighted. I told her I didn't like this predicament she created, but I was glad Ella had good transplant possibilities. Samantha stated the doctors were still utilizing her cornea and she was having surgery in 4 weeks, daring me to fight. I liked that, and Ella was blessed to have her mother support her. Samantha's respiration was audible as the connection fell quiet. Her tone changed totally, bleeding fury into sheer fear. She said she was afraid about the surgery since she had never had surgery before and thought someone cutting into her eye made her sick. Over the previous week she experienced panic attacks about it, waking up gasping in the night. She couldn't sleep and had dreams of the procedure going wrong. She spoke like a real person for the first time in months, not the manipulative person who had harassed me since February. Despite all, I felt small pity. Recognizing medical procedure fear was real. I assured Samantha her concern was reasonable and understandable. Many individuals are afraid of surgery, especially eye surgery, which requires awareness. I advised she discuss anxiety treatment with the surgical team, such as pre-procedure medicine or relaxation exercises. Her silence was followed by a whispered request to be the donor as I was a better match. My number was solid. After refusing to contribute, she spent weeks attempting to get me to have surgery. Now she had to live with her choices. I wasn't going to save her from a predicament she made because she was terrified. Her dread was real, but it didn't modify her actions or require me to have surgery. Again, Samantha's voice strained. She felt I punished her by forcing surgery when there was a better choice. She accused me of being vengeful and exploiting the circumstance to get back at her for everything. I patiently stated that I wasn't forcing her. Ella's mother had caused this predicament by valuing her appearance over her daughter's health. She would give since the doctor said she could. She was afraid, but weeks of harassment and manipulation remained. My phone died after she hung up. I put my phone on the kitchen counter and felt exhausted, like the chat had drained me. Dad phoned the next day. He spoke in such tone when he was going to lecture me on family responsibilities. He stated Samantha was having a breakdown about the procedure and I should give. He repeated his points from weeks earlier about me being unmarried with no one to impress and my career not dependent on my beauty. He stated programmers didn't require flawless eyesight like models and losing one eye wouldn't harm my lifestyle. I stopped him off and informed him his arguments were insulting the first time and didn't improve by repeating them. Despite being unmarried and working from home, my body wasn't negotiable. I told my dad Samantha spent weeks saying the procedure would ruin her modeling career. After the agency determined that was a fraud, she said she was too terrified to proceed. I acknowledged her medical procedure phobia. Her worry didn't force me to get surgery. Like Ella's mother, moms have to do terrifying things for their kids. He said I had changed since this began and was harsh and cold-hearted. He stated I used to be understanding and eager to help family when I inquired what changed. Now I prioritized my comfort over my niece and sister. I informed him I was prioritizing my body autonomy over my family's demand to get surgery, which was different. After much argument, he hung up in frustration. I scheduled a week later meeting with Miriam. In her office, I informed her my father's assertion that I had changed. I worried he was correct when she asked me what I thought. I may have been cold-hearted by not helping when I was the better donor. Miriam leaned forward and said something that solidified everything. She said I hadn't changed. I stopped putting others' comfort above mine. This boundary setting upset my family's routine of prioritizing Samantha's needs. Because I usually did what they asked, people saw my self-protection as being tough or frigid. While pondering her statements, I realized she was accurate. My family's discomfort with my boundaries didn't mean the boundaries were wrong. It meant the old dynamic was unhealthy and they didn't like having to adjust. Maintaining these limits means admitting that some family ties may not return. My father may always remember me as the unpleasant daughter who rejected help. Samantha may never forgive me for not saving her from her decisions, but protecting myself was worth it. James texted me a week before Samantha's surgery to meet for coffee. I gazed at the message for a few minutes, uncertain if I wanted to sit down with someone who'd tried to buy my cornea like a used car part. Yet his tone was different from his forceful messages weeks before. I suggested we meet in a coffee shop between our neighborhoods. He looked unfamiliar when I entered and saw him at a corner table. With black bags under his eyes and unkempt hair, James looked like he hadn't slept in days. I noticed him standing with a weary smile that didn't reach his eyes. After ordering beverages, we sat awkwardly before he started chatting. He said the preceding 2 months had been awful at home. Ella continued asking questions they couldn't answer, worsening Samantha's concern before the procedure. The 8-year-old didn't understand why the adults fought when they tried to help her see better. James took 2 hands to his face and claimed he was fatigued from handling Samantha's panic attacks and keeping Ella from feeling guilty for the family quarrel. I was surprised by his next move. He apologized for pressing me, noting the $60,000 offer. He took the issue like a business discussion where money could repair everything, thinking like a problem solver to find a solution everyone could accept. He was visibly uneasy as he realized he'd been wrong to sell my body. His apology was more sincere than my parents' since he took responsibility for specific acts rather than making general, "sorry you feel that way" comments. I thanked him for his apologies and said it indicated he recognized his mistake. While drinking coffee, I wondered about something upsetting me. I asked James why Samantha was so opposed to the operation beyond fear given the medical risks were low and recovery was expected to be short. He paused, peering into his coffee cup as if the solution was there. Then he said something unexpected. Samantha had always feared altering her look, even momentarily. Not only modeling career worried, but horribly afraid he didn't understand. Since she started modeling at 12, she'd defined herself as gorgeous. He couldn't see how face surgery, especially little eye surgery without scars, damaged her sense of self. James tried to talk to her about it, but she became defensive and stated it was about her profession, which was easier to fight about than admitting she was afraid of losing her only asset. His answer clarified Samantha's psychology without condoning her conduct. I informed James that Samantha's identity troubles and worries didn't excuse family pressure, and Ella guilt-tripping me into surgery. He nodded and agreed that Samantha's motivation didn't excuse her actions. I suggested that this event may help Samantha appreciate her worth beyond her beauty. James nodded regretfully and hoped so. But he didn't think Samantha would learn anything. He stated his wife blamed others when things went wrong, instead of evaluating her own conduct, and today was no different. After coffee, James thanked me for meeting him. I understood the whole problem better as we exited the coffee shop, but I was still irritated about how it happened. Mom phoned 3 days before Samantha's operation to ask me to family dinner at her place. I rejected quickly, not wanting to eat awkwardly with everyone like the last months hadn't happened. However, my mother stated Ella would be there and wanted to see me. She stated my niece constantly requesting Aunt Rachel to visit again. Lacking the will to punish Ella for her mother's actions bound me. This was for Ella, so I came. I knew it would be awkward, but I wanted to stay in touch with my niece throughout this adult struggle. I could almost taste the tension when I arrived at my folks' place that evening. Nobody mentioned corneas, surgeries, or the months-long family battle because everyone was too polite. Ella came up and grabbed me when I entered, placing her little arms around my waist. With her impaired vision, she inquired whether I was still furious with Mommy. I crouched beside her and informed her that grown-ups often disagree on important matters. But I loved her. And none of this was her fault. That explanation satisfied her, so she drew me into the living room to show me a new toy. Dinner and everyone's phony friendliness were awful. My father inquired about my work in a really inquisitive manner, as if to show he cared about my profession. Mom continued offering me more food and asking whether I was comfortable. Samantha pushed food about her plate and answered questions in small phrases across from me without looking at me. James attempted to keep the subject safe with weather and local news. Ella spoke enthusiastically about school, unaware of the stress. Ella invited me into her room after supper to see her artwork. We were sitting on her bedroom floor when she begged me in a whisper if I would give her my eye because Mother was worried. I was surprised she knew these information and wondered what she overheard or Samantha told her. I gently emphasized that Mother would be courageous and help her, and that being brave sometimes includes doing things when we're terrified. Ella nodded genuinely and stated she was frightened about surgery. I told her it's normal to be afraid of things we don't comprehend. She appeared happy and showed me sketches of her returning vision following surgery. The photographs showed her seeing brightly colored flowers, butterflies, and family faces. Looking at these optimistic drawings from a youngster manipulated by adults broke my heart. Samantha quickly caught me as I pulled on my jacket near the front entrance after the family supper. She apologized for everything. Her apology was hasty and awkward, with words falling over each other like she'd prepared them but didn't mean them. I could see she was told to apologize rather than comprehending her mistake. Like a performer, she kept looking toward the living room where everyone was. I thanked her for apologizing but didn't say I forgave her, and her expression clenched in disappointment. She expected me to accept and return to our typical family dynamic quickly. She left without saying a word when I didn't satisfy her. James contacted me the day before Samantha's surgery that she was at the hospital for pre-op appointments and instructed him to inform me of the 8:00 a.m. operation. I thanked you for the update and wished Ella a smooth ride. No personal well wishes for Samantha were intentional, and James wasn't shocked. He replied with a thumbs up and promised to inform me after surgery. I couldn't focus on my coding the day Samantha had surgery. I checked my phone every few minutes for updates, even though I told myself I didn't care about Samantha. James texted around midday that Samantha was recovering after surgery. Once Ella was ready and the cornea was viable, the operation would happen tomorrow. I was relieved for Ella and confused about Samantha. I was delighted she did it so Ella could obtain medical attention. However, the months of manipulation, familial pressure, and guilt for preserving my body left me enraged. Samantha did what she should have done from the start, yet she still inflicted harm by avoiding it. James sent me Ella's transplant operation updates the next morning. The surgical team appeared optimistic when they returned her to the operating room at 8:30. I looked at my phone for a moment before saying I hoped things went well. Another SMS arrived at 10 o'clock saying the procedure was going well and the surgeons liked the cornea. Despite trying to concentrate, I checked my phone every few minutes. James updated at 11:30 that they were completing, and the surgical team said everything went well. Knowing Ella will finally have her vision repair made me feel relieved. Just before midday, Ella received the last SMS confirming her recovery and good visual prognosis. The transplant worked, although she needed weeks of special eye medications and limited exercise. I instantly replied that I was delighted she was okay and hoped her rehabilitation went well. James thanked me and promised to update me on her development. 3 days later, my mother called with that tone that signaled she wanted something from me. She asked how I was doing and spoke about the weather before explaining why she was calling. She stated Samantha's recuperation was harder than planned, with pain and concern about mending. Samantha is emotionally struggling and needs family support, she said. The inference was clear without her saying so. Her voice indicated that she expected me to volunteer to visit or contact Samantha to check on her. I inhaled and informed my mother that Samantha had James, the babysitter, and both her parents close. I said she had enough of recovery support. My mother paused before stating that family support was different, and Samantha was struggling. I told her I wouldn't console someone who hadn't recognized her months of harm. My mother groaned and said she understood, but she disagreed with me. After that, she awkwardly hung up. 2 weeks following both procedures, my mother called again to arrange lunch. Her request was for just us and no relatives. She claimed she'd been thinking about my response to her apologies and wanted to talk about our family dynamics. My mother never had long emotional talks about family dynamics, so I was suspicious. However, her voice was less defensive and more hesitant this time. I agreed to meet her at a nearby restaurant the following Saturday. The week before lunch, I questioned if she was ready to confront the problematic habits or just trying to smooth things up without meaningful change. I went to the restaurant first on Saturday and secured a peaceful table in the rear. My mother entered nervously and smiled tentatively as she sat down. We ordered dinner and awkwardly discussed work and weather till it arrived. After setting down her fork, my mother glanced at me with an unusual expression. She said she'd always seen Samantha as more delicate and in need of protection due to her modeling profession and beauty obsession. She realized she'd ignored my wants and feelings throughout the years after seeing me stand up to the whole family. She constantly expected me to be reasonable and satisfy Samantha's needs. As she admitted to making me feel less important than my sister, Her voice shook. Her prior apology seemed more about resolving dispute than understanding. As she talked, my wrath toward her softened. My mother inquired how to fix our relationship. I liked that she asked instead of expecting everything would return to normal. I told her honestly that she shouldn't expect me to sacrifice for Samantha in the future. I requested that she prioritize both girls' needs rather than Samantha to repair our friendship. I demanded that she obey my boundaries, even if it upset Samantha or complicated family matters. My mother cried and squeezed my hand across the table. She agreed and claimed she wanted to do better, that she hadn't understood how much partiality had hurt until the situation forced her to see it. I was cautiously optimistic for the first time in months that our relationship may mend with true effort from both of us. James sent me Ella's progress images 3 weeks after the procedures. The first batch depicted her happy visage with a protective eye covering and joyful notes about her improved vision. He reported her visual progress every several days. Ella's doctor said her graft was mending well and she could see better than before her illness. Ella sent a snapshot of her elaborate drawings of flowers and butterflies, which she couldn't see previously. James's text claimed she was happy to see her mother's face again and was pointing out features she'd missed. I was thrilled for my niece when I saw their drawings. Ella's excitement and satisfaction that the medical procedure was favorable made all my conflicted feelings regarding Samantha and my family worthwhile. Samantha didn't contact me for a month following surgery. In his Ella updates, James periodically noted that Samantha had healed physically from the treatment but was struggling with her emotions. He stated she was irritated that the procedure was tougher and more painful than predicted. He said Samantha was upset I never thanked her for giving to Ella. I let James know that Samantha doing what moms do for their kids wasn't a sacrifice I needed to appreciate. She'd spent months lying about job implications and encouraging Ella to guilt-trip me into surgery. Going through with what she should have agreed to instantly didn't impress me. After that, James said nothing but acknowledged that he understood my position. My father contacted 6 weeks after both surgery with his usual direct family conflict style. He claimed enough time had gone and the family needed to move on from turmoil. He wanted to have a party to put this behind us and resume family life. I told him I was willing to attend family occasions, but that normal needed to mean something different from it did before. I stated that going ahead required healthy boundaries and mutual respect rather than just pretending the preceding months hadn't happened. My father seemed upset and suggested I was making things more complex than they needed to be. He stated everyone had apologized and Samantha had done the right thing in the end, so we should all just get past it. I pointed out that apologies without altered conduct didn't mean much, and that I wasn't going to return to a dynamic where my needs were immediately neglected. He complained about my being stubborn, but ultimately agreed that he'd host a family cookout and I could come if I wanted to. 2 months after surgery, I headed to my parents' place for my father's cookout. Coming into their driveway and seeing Samantha's vehicle parked made me apprehensive. After entering the garden, I noted the uneasy atmosphere of everyone being extremely nice and careful with their words. Samantha was talking to James near the grill when I arrived and hardly looked at me. Mama hugged me and whispered she was delighted I arrived. Ella called my name and ran across the yard toward me. Ella slammed into me with an embrace and showed me her improved vision. She correctly read yard signs and detailed microscopic details on flowers and foliage she couldn't see before the transplant. Her joy and excitement were contagious. Watching her point out everything she could now see made the difficult family dynamics worth it. Later that afternoon, Samantha and I were alone on my parents' back porch. When I stepped outside to get away from the crowd, she followed. We were uneasy for a minute before she said quietly. Her modeling agency included her gift in a promotion promoting loving moms. Several clients had praised her, and the tale had garnered exposure for her and the agency. She softly acknowledged that I was right about the career implications being overblown. She was afraid about the procedure, not the career repercussions. She lowered her voice as she said that she'd never had surgery and that the thought of having her eye operated on had caused weeks of panic episodes. It was her closest to taking responsibility for her actions. She wasn't apologetic, but she said her anxieties were about the procedure, not her career. While I didn't declare I'd forgiven her, I nodded to acknowledge her. We waited there for another time before returning inside to the family. I told Samantha I understood being terrified of medical issues, but she shouldn't rush me into surgery or guilt-trip me. Moving her weight, she peered down at the porch planks. She regretted her actions, especially including Ella in adult issues. I nodded to acknowledge her but didn't forgive her. We returned inside where everyone was eating and feigning calm. I avoided Samantha for a few months and spent more time with my mother and Ella. Dad stopped calling my looks or career worthless. He nevertheless reacted defensively to pressure campaign mentions. James texted me sometimes to check in and apologize for his role in things, which I liked since he appeared to understand why they did wrong. I started visiting Miriam every other week to maintain healthy family boundaries and stay in touch with loved ones. She showed me I could love my family without being hurt. I practiced identifying manipulation so I could stop it before it got out of hand, as with the cornea scenario. James reported that Samantha signed multiple modeling contracts 4 months after the procedures, including one that portrayed her as a dedicated mother who gave to her kid. She had battled so hard against contributing, so it was ludicrous. But now she was earning money by being unselfish. James claimed Samantha seldom mentioned the operation and didn't realize how close she came to refusing to help Ella. In one therapy session, I told Miriam I was frustrated that Samantha would never comprehend her injury. Miriam asked me what I could manage. I couldn't make Samantha learn from what occurred, only how I treated her. I choose to focus on Ella rather than Samantha and keep things distant but courteous with my sister. At Ella's 6-month visit, the doctor remarked her recovery was fantastic, better than expected. Now that she could see the school board, she took art courses and sketched these intricate images. Watching her point out minor things in her paintings she never seen before made me thrilled the medical portion went well. Despite the familial chaos, my mother hosted Thanksgiving dinner and I didn't feel apprehensive traveling there like I used to. I stated my disapproval of some issues and practices. My mother respected such limits. My mother interrupted my father's joking about me being the troublesome daughter and stated I was right to defend myself. Her defense of me nearly knocked my fork over. Samantha and I became cordial at family gatherings but didn't hang together or communicate on the phone. She never thanked me for being a backup donor, or acknowledged her unreasonable expectations. I understood that this was probably our best relationship and was okay with it. Olivia and I had coffee one day and she stated I seemed more confident than previously. I reconsidered and agreed with her. Standing up to my family when they pressured me and preserving my limits when things became heated made me trust myself more. It was inspiring to understand I could withstand family disapproval and come out all right. One evening 6 months after the operations, I sat at my desk thinking about how the event affected my concept of family and body autonomy. I was delighted Ella got medical treatment and Samantha did what a mother should. Teaching my family that my limits mattered was worth the brief friction and unpleasantness, so I was pleased I didn't let them manipulate me into contributing. Mom started contacting me every Sunday afternoon to ask about my week and listen to my work assignment. She asked me about the coding and the difficulties I was solving instead of waiting to chat about Samantha's recent picture session. She told me she'd been researching computer languages online to better understand my profession one Sunday. I almost dropped my phone hearing that. She stopped making remarks about my attire or inquiring when I was meeting someone, making family calls much less unpleasant. James emailed me photographs of Ella reading chapter books and drawing intricately, demonstrating her eyesight recovery. He wrote letters moaning about Samantha taking 2 hours to get dressed for grocery store visits or sweating out about a mirror wrinkle. I generally complimented Ella's growth or said something neutral about Samantha's conduct in my quick comments. I suggested he should see a therapist for his marriage issues when he asked for advice on Samantha's vanity. We both liked it more when he stopped and only sent Ella updates. Students covered every wall and table in the primary school cafeteria art display. Ella grabbed my hand when I entered and hurried me to her part, excitedly pointing off her drawings. She had this amazing butterfly sketch with tiny wing patterns that she couldn't create before the surgery because she couldn't see them. Samantha was always shooting photographs and videos and sharing them on social media with remarks praising her amazing kid. I disliked the paperwork since Samantha made everything about her internet image. At least she showed there and looked interested in Ella's work. Dad phoned to offer lunch 8 months after Samantha wanted my cornea. He spent the first 10 minutes in this cafe near my place awkwardly talking about weather and traffic. He then laid down his menu and stated he owed me a serious apology for his behavior during the transplant. He said he was incorrect to think my profession and appearance were less significant than Samantha's because I worked from home. He reflected on how he always anticipated me to be the easy kid who didn't need attention while Samantha was treated better since she was more frail. He said he was proud of how I stood up for myself despite family opposition. That required courage he didn't realize. I could tell he meant it because his voice broke. Since I accepted his apologies, I wanted to improve our relationship. Samantha had numerous more modeling jobs in the following months, and her agent promoted her contribution story. She told parenting publications that giving her cornea was the most important thing she'd ever done and about Mom's sacrifices. Given her initial opposition to contributing, the web stories seemed ludicrous. The great exposure made her kinder during family gatherings. Because she was high on attention and praise, she smiled more and made less harsh remarks about others. I never mentioned how phony the loving mother image was compared to her actions during those months of pressure and manipulation. While sitting at my computer one evening, I noticed I didn't feel that searing fury anymore when I thought about February and March. The experience and family conduct were awful. But I learnt vital lessons about setting boundaries and trusting my own judgment when others disagreed. With more confidence in my choices, I was less inclined to second-guess myself when someone pressured me into something I didn't want to do. Miriam's treatment helped me see manipulative methods and stop them before they got out of hand. I could be appreciative for what I learned without pretending the incident was acceptable or my family handled it nicely. A few weeks later, Samantha, James, and Ella joined us for supper at Mom's. Ella questioned me across the table why I didn't give her my eye like Mommy did halfway through the dinner. Everyone stopped eating to hear my response. I emphasized that mommies and daddies care for their kids differently than aunts and uncles. Some family members don't have the same responsibility to support their children as parents. Ella hesitated, then nodded and said she was grateful Mommy was bold enough to let her see again. Her mother did the right thing, I agreed. Samantha stared at her dish silently. At Olivia's apartment on New Year's Eve, I reflected on how much had changed since February. With meaningful interactions and mutual respect, my connection with Mom was improving instead of being rejected. Dad apologized and appeared to grasp his mistake. Ella and I had a good connection, so I could be in her life without pressure or manipulation. Samantha and I would certainly never be close sisters who phoned each other for advice or hung out. But we could be together without friction, which was plenty. I defended my right to make bodily decisions, made sure Ella had the best medical care, and educated my family to accept my limitations. Despite my fear, standing up for myself while everyone was against me was one of the finest things I ever did.